Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. And today I'm in conversation. I'm happy, I'm pleased, I'm elated to be in conversation with a Philadelphia-based painter, singer, songwriter, producer who seamlessly combines art and music, giving audiences the opportunity to see her artwork unfold while listening to the music that she has written and performed. Please welcome Sarah Kane. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, how are you again? So it's good to be here.
Yeah, it's funny. I always like put a little extra flourish on the introductions. Mm-hmm. People feel like, oh, wow, I need to take that. I need to put that. I need to make that the ringtone or something. So, as we get started, I want to kind of dive into something that's either going to be frightening or is going to be like, I could talk about this for hours. Let's talk about you. What's the Sarah Kane story? Describe your earliest experiences with art, fondest art memory, and what'd you grow up listening to? Because, music is a big part of your background.
Huge. That's a huge question. So that's a loaded answer. My earliest experience with art, I think, was like maybe carving pumpkins with like my family and knowing that my older brother was like really dope at making it look scary. And so like he was one of my older brother's like one of my idols, and I was just like blown away by it. I knew that my aunt on my mom's side was really great at doing stained glass art pieces. And then I always knew that my father's brother was really great at painting. And then like we all just kind of talked about it. And I'd say maybe some of my early structured memories and possibly what you could consider lessons would probably be watching Bob Ross, to be honest. Like we used to watch it all the time and we just loved it. And my dad sometimes would try things like, I think Bob Ross would have kits. Yeah. And so he would try it and he actually was good, but he just like didn't consider himself a painter. He considered himself a musician. So I feel like I probably got lessons there, watching Bob and just like his appreciation for nature really, but I just was watching. But my earliest, I would say, time I really took art seriously would definitely be when I hit 9th and 10th grade. So our classes in school were 90 minutes long. We had block scheduling out of nowhere. Yeah. And I went from the middle school, where it was 45 minutes of class and you spent half the time setting up and breaking down. And I thought that art was just kind of whack. I thought the classes were whack. You know what I mean? Like I thought it was like clay coil pots. I thought it was like I didn't feel compelled to do anything. But then in those classes, we had a teacher that was like, all right, go grab your projects from the drawers. And if you don't say, wow, it probably sucks. And but he was intense. And that was like the first time I saw an intense art teacher. And I just kind of responded. And then it just started happening. I didn't really know that I could do it until then. So
thank you.
What did I grow up listening to?
Yeah.
Everything from, I'd say, classic Southern rock, blues and things like that. Definitely the band that influenced my family probably the most was the Allman Brothers. My father played the same instrument and actually sounded like Greg Allman when he would play in bands. Oh, wow. And he was pretty obsessive about it. He'd be like, this is a lot. But, it's really amazing because that was one of the first bands, when you grow up, you just listen to them and you think, oh, that's great. But the more I learned about them growing up, the more I realized that in that time period, you had a lot of racial tension down there in those southern areas, and they were one of the bands that did not get down with that. They had a black drummer, they had a bunch of other. They had a mixed band, and I never knew that growing up. That was like the flavor of it, and that's kind of what ended up being on my project as well, like a bunch of different everybody. Yeah. And so I felt really proud about that because I was like, all right, that's really amazing that we got raised on that sound and we got to know what that sound is when everybody just gets along and rocks,
That's great.
So, yeah.
And I think you kind of started answering part of my second question here. So tricky. So creatively, what would you say your first love is? And I feel like it's music, but I want to really kind of like peel that onion back a little bit. Like creatively, what's your first love?
Creatively, I would definitely I would definitely say music. I mean, it's just been, but I really didn't know anything without it. I mean, my father was in band since he was 16.
Mm-hmm.
My mother met him while he was playing in his band, right? So like music was the part of my whole life. Like we have video of me at like 2 or 3 years old, like dancing in the grass, rocking out, like with like a little bowl cut on my bangs, you know what I mean? My dad's like singing and I'm just like, yeah. And then we have some old recordings of like me playing Mary Had a Little Lamb, singing Mary Had a Little Lamb, but I would like make up my own verses. I would like
a little remix action. I see.
Yeah. Like I would kind of just like be banging and like I'd take the school one day part like off on a tangent or something.
Yeah.
And so like I was doing things like that forever. I'd say music is my first love. I can't, but art is kind of, I'd say I've told people music is the thing that like gets everything out in a fiery way and in an honest way. But art is like the still place I go to. So it's like two opposite ends of the spectrum for me.
Yeah. I think back when you mentioned, you know, being a kid and kind of just rocking out, I remember like some of those like early points, and I remember I was like maybe 5 or something. I was the MC for our graduation in like pre-K or something.
For what?
Yeah, which is wild because like I get the wild stage fright now. I mean, I hide it really well, but I'm like, yo, do you want to see a 6'4" man crumble? Here you go. And
did you like have a name for yourself as the MC?
No, it was just me in a suit with two like glasses that were really big like this. I looked very cute, but also I was just like, I was very awkward too. I was trying not to smile the entire time. Kids, I don't know. And I remember, you know, back in the day, we had some type of dispute with the landlord, and this kind of ties to just, I guess, how I go about things and answering questions, and maybe just saying things that everyone is thinking, but no one's going to say. I just remember the landlord was saying something that just wasn't quite accurate. I may have been 5, I may have been 4. I just remember in the courtroom saying, "Liar, liar, pants on fire," as a kid, and I was like, no, this is going to stick with me for the next 30 plus years of. This is the thing that people are thinking, and I'm just going to say it. So you'll thank me later. You'll appreciate me later.
Right.
So
you're like the blunt side.
Oh, 100%, 100%. But also like being that person that's going to go to that next level. I think as an adult or as I've gotten older, I found ways to kind of rein it in a little bit while still being authentic, still being truthful, but rein it in a way that it's a little bit more palatable for people. Because if you just go full pew, 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 nah, doesn't work. Doesn't work all the time.
Nope.
People
Not even
like,
family.
It's like, can you give me that cough syrup with a little grape juice, please? Thanks.
Yes, exactly.
So when you're taking, I want to talk about process a little bit here. So,
sure.
You know, in generalities, obviously, when taking on a project, like, you want to start working on something, what is something that you do in the middle, something that you start off with rather? So the first thing that you do was something that's in the middle, and what's kind of that last thing you do, like when you're kind of finishing up? Because I would imagine, you hear that thing with painters. Painting's never quite done. So that's where I'm kind of going at with this.
Yeah. So are you talking specifically about painting or are you talking about music? Which one?
In general. So either painting or music, like just kind of speaking on process.
Okay. So I'd say in the beginning, I let it really overtake me. Meaning like, I wrote the majority of my album on the guitar, and I was actually learning guitar at the time. So like when I had been learning music since I was 6 on piano, but when I had started learning guitar later in life, I was in that zone of like learning again and trying again. And then I would get ideas because I had never done those things on guitar. So I would just let that overtake me, and I would just maybe sit for hours and work an idea out. I would let it, when I say overtake, I just mean like, if I'm in the shower, I'm thinking about it. If I'm driving the car, I'm thinking about it. Or maybe I make a rough recording and I listen to it in the car. With the art, I would say I have learned, my process has become refined in the beginning, where I always start in the middle and find where like a middle reference point is. And I tend to go with one color. So I might thin the color out because I work in oil paints a lot.
Yeah.
So I thin the color out and I treat like a thin brown color, almost like I'm pencil sketching. Yeah. So like, I'm doing a rough sketch with that, and it's a thin oil. So if I mess up, I can just wipe it off, right? Like a pencil. Yeah. And then but I still let it just be free and I let it go. I don't think about being perfect. If it's a big color block, like a big blob of a house, I might just do a big block. I'm not going for detail. I'm going more for vibe and feeling. Like, all right, that's here, that's there, that feels good. All right, I want to focus on that. All right, I'm going to detail that. All right, I'm not going to do this. In the middle, I'm probably just, I would say, doing it, right? So in the recording process, I'm going to, I thank God I can record myself, so if I need to redo, I have plenty of other people who now record me and help out too. But if I need to record myself, I can just take hours and hours to get it right and get out what I'm hearing. Yeah. That's hard, like stepping it up to what is really, I think, should be felt and what I'm feeling for this. Do I need to push my voice to a level of screaming? Do I need to push it to a level of extreme intimacy? What do I have to do?
Right.
And then, so taking the time to really do it. And then with the art, I'd say in the middle, I'm really hacking out proportions. Like I'm hacking out, well, what do I want to do? Very detailed, very finite and zone, like really focus in. Yeah. Zoom in on this and what's fitting on the canvas versus, and I'm picking colors. I tend to be pretty bold in my colors, and I don't paint, like some people paint like a face and then they move on to like the shoulder, they move on to whatever. I tend to, if I mix a color, it's kind of weird. And I don't know if this will make sense, but I'll mix the color and then I will look and kind of the way you might do selective hearing, where if I said, hey, listen to your podcast and see if you can hear any pops and extra noise that we need to clean up.
Yeah.
Right. You turn your ear to selective hearing. I turn my eyes to kind of focus on the color I mixed. So I might blur my eyes only to, and in the blur, I'm only focusing on, well, what's the green shape that I just mixed? Okay. Well, where's that green shade everywhere else in the painting? And so by me kind of doing that and jumping around, I'm constantly kind of playing connect the dots and constantly rechecking my proportions as I work.
Gotcha. Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like if I put a triangle of brown, but then all of a sudden when I do orange, it's like a square, and then that triangle looks really off compared to that orange square where I put things on, then I can fix it.
Got it. Yeah.
In the end, I would say music is a huge process. So in the end, you're mixing, mastering, listening to it a ton. If the art doesn't, all I'll say about the end process is if it doesn't happen fast, then I let it happen slow. Like if I'm messing it up and if I'm in like a funk or if I'm just not getting anywhere, I put it down and I'll stare at it for a while. I'll give it time.
So that's something we're going to put a pin in because I know we have a question later that kind of attaches to that. Okay. So I want to ask you this. This is that bullet point question to it. What is an art bomb?
So I think that when you become conscious of what you're really doing, I think that a lot of intention matters, right? Like anything you love to do, it's not just about, oh, I'm hosting a show or, oh, I'm painting this picture. It's like, well, what do I want people to feel? What do I really want to happen? Or what am I really feeling? So I feel like an art bomb for me is like, since I wrote this song, I spent time to write it. I meant those words. I experienced those things. I took time to play the guitar, learn the guitar, call up other musicians, took time to pick the right musician. Like personality matters on music. If you really know what you're doing as a producer, it matters who you call. You can't have some egotistical maniac person that might be fantastic, but if they don't believe they're fantastic, then they might be playing too much or something. You have to just be wise who you call. And if not, you better coach them well as a producer. That and going through that entire process, which sometimes a song like this, but as an independent artist could take a year and a half to get done, right? Yeah. To pay your mixer, to get your thing into quarantines, whatever. And then on top of it, taking another 30, 40, sometimes even my longest painting is around 200 hours to express.
Yeah.
Then that I would hope in a world today where sometimes it's hard to look to artists to actually believe what they say and believe what they do. I would hope that once people really can intake this, so there's two sides to the art bomb. One is, I hope you take me seriously in my intentions, right? I hope that my intentions match. Like, you can see I work, I did this, I love what I do, and I live it. But on the other side, I also think that an art bomb is something that will, because of the way it's delivered musically and visually, it allows the viewer to, like, if they want to zone out from the art and focus on the music, then they'd listen to that. If they get sick and tired of focusing on the music, they can focus on the art. And it kind of like traps you in this thing of experiencing it.
Yeah.
And if you feel like checking your phone, who cares? You look up, you might see a different place in the painting.
Yeah.
Just like you might notice the bridge is different the 10th time you listen to a song, right? So I think it just allows people to really have their own interpretations, because like my body isn't even in the photos. I mean, my one self-portrait is, right? That was intentional, right? Because that's a song about me. Right. But like, I just think that it allows people to have their own experience with it.
I like that. Mm-hmm. It sounds immersive. It's immersive. It makes you think. It's very, I think, just gives you a different perspective in consuming and experiencing the art than the work that's there, whether it's the music, whether it's the visual component to it. And I think it gives different perspectives. So I like that.
Yeah, a lot of people have said, I'm glad you took the time to do this. And so like, I think that a lot of times artists, anybody creative, can get trapped in the thought of thinking that we shouldn't respect ourselves. Mm-hmm. And so just seeing someone take time and putting it out, I think can help inspire artists to respect themselves, because a lot of artists deal with mental health issues. And, you know, and half the time, if they just would have respect for themselves and understand they are gifted and they deserve respect, you know, it wouldn't be as rough as a road.
Yeah. Which that brings me to this question. I'm gonna skip ahead a little bit, because we're talking about being aware and being mindful. So inevitably there are going to be those things that kind of just catch you. You're like, I don't feel like creating. I don't want to do this, blah, blah, blah. Describe like something in your day that you must do that just kind of keeps you centered, keeps you right. And, you know, for some people it might be going for a run, or some sort of physical activity, or mindfulness practice, or even getting your favorite coffee drink. How do you plan out your day, and what sort of like mindful sort of things that you kind of do to make your day run a certain way, make your day run right?
It has shifted. Okay. So it used to be, being healthy and working out my body has always been a huge factor of being able to focus mentally. I feel like, and I grew up that way as an athlete playing college sports, and I feel like I just always had it, but without knowing it. Now it's like, I used to, how can I put this? When I was working weddings all the time, I would get in at like 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock at night. And I still was creating this album. So I might stay up until 7 or 8 o'clock. In the morning. So I would budget that time to like, all right, I wouldn't book certain things on certain days because I knew I was going to be up real late. But like now it's different. I have like a lot more daytime jobs, right? I have teaching at the college, teaching these kids private lessons. I am getting a lot more painting commissions than normal, and I'm trying to work this album. So I have to like be awake, be functioning. Yeah. So I'd say the normal things I do to keep myself focused now, it would normally be going out for a run. And it was always, I did yoga for about 5 to 7 years. And then I just went through, since 2020, I went through like about 1.5 to 2 years straight of multiple different injuries from working out. Yeah, it was pretty debilitating. Like I had a torn rotator cuff. I couldn't play guitar. I couldn't really sit at the canvas for a long time without feeling my shoulder sag and in terrible pain. I couldn't go for a run because I had pulled some things in my hip a couple years ago. So like normally those things that you mentioned were my things, right? Mm-hmm. So for me now, I would say I have to take the time to get very healthy food and cook for the week. Yeah. So because I don't have time to cook all the time and my schedule is so off. So I feel that I am severely affected if I eat poorly. Mm. My brain kind of gets anxious. I can't keep things together. I forget a lot. And so as of right now, the most important thing for me is to like really buy like my haul of vegetables every week, cook them, and have like a week's worth of food ready. I do have coffee in the morning. I do have protein in the morning. I do make myself eat breakfast. And that really does help me get through like teaching my classes, taking the hour ride from Philadelphia to where I teach, without like one feeling like I need to go do that, like go find food. And, it's like, I think that's treating my body healthy and really taking steps to eat well right now is my biggest focus. So
makes sense. And I think that's kind of the same thing for me. If something doesn't go right, it feels like it's almost a snowball and I have to kind of reset and recapture it. It's like, all right, nope, these episodes are going to go bad. Nah, let's just start and do something else. Let's do something else. And, it might be, I'm not going to have time to eat this week. I like to look at during the course of a certain week or what have you, I might have 18 interviews and the day job and all of these different things. And those interviews require a certain amount of research and so on. So I'm like, all right, let me just look at potentially 54 hours or so towards the podcast in a given week. And then having the 40-hour work week. So right there, we're in the 90s and trying to figure out how I can steal time, how I can measure it. And sometimes certain things fall to the wayside, like maybe going to the gym, maybe cooking, good food. And I found ways to kind of hack that a little bit, whether it's, buying meal kits and just like, this is food. I'm going to put the work in early on to get an idea of what's quote unquote healthier. But I can't just eat potato chips all night. I can't just like, well, here we go.
No.
I find that it'd be some instances where I'm still drinking the coffee from that morning and drinking a beer, which not a good combo. Not the best combo, but it is a combo. But it is a combo, though.
It is a creative combo.
Yes. I remember at one point I took a shot of whiskey as a pre-workout, and I was like, look, I got to figure this out. I'm all over the place.
No, I mean,
that's when I know it's out of whack. Yeah.
And that goes back, I feel like that piggies back into like, we are taught so much this whole like starving artist mentality. And even though we might not be making buku bucks at certain points, like to have that opinion of ourselves makes us act differently, right? Mm-hmm. Like as soon as we have this feeling of respect for ourselves, it's like, okay, the better I am as an artist, the more transparent I am. So that means if I'm feeling like hell, I'm going to transfer hell into my work, right? Or I'm going to bring an attitude to this interview, right? So you need to be conscious of that and take that seriously. Like we are a good artist, I think or good creative, or somebody who's, in these fields is very transparent no matter what they do. So yeah, that's great. I'm glad you're not taking shots before you work out.
It's fine. Yeah, but that's when it's not going right. But when it's going right, things are moving beautifully. And even when things aren't ideal, at least, there's kind of that safety net that one can rest on, that inevitably when, they need to kind of jog things through. They need to kind of push through and get the work done, at least from my perspective, and kind of making content, having deadlines and things of that sort. I'm able to do it, and it gives me wiggle room in case something goofy happens.
Yes.
So I got two more real questions, and then I have some rapid fire questions for you. Okay. So this question here, I like to make my work sometimes more challenging than it needs to be, especially when I'm feeling creatively stifled. I'll forget questions. I'll leave a piece of equipment just so I can kind of hack something loose in my brain of like, oh, let me just improv these questions. Like I can do this. I can just do it off the cuff. It's like solving a puzzle sometimes. How do you insert certain challenges within your work to make it more interesting? Like, I go through a podcast and I don't want to feel like I'm winging it. So, when you're doing a lot of different stuff. So do you add anything into your work to make it more challenging, to kind of jog loose some new creativity? I
would say now, like musically, if I'm working on a song, it might not be, I plan out writing down the lyrics so much. Maybe I like to get on, put the headset on, get in the session, and then just see what my voice wants to do as it improvs and vibes to the track, instead of writing it all down. Like letting my body react to me feels a little bit more valid than always sitting there and dictating what's going to happen. As far as restrictions in that field, it's more based on like, we're not really restricting. We're really focused on good quality mics, good quality sound capture, maybe going back kind of in time and finding studios that have like really great outboard gear and like stuff that isn't just so into Pro Tools and into, you know, any sound effect I could pull out of the air. Something that just is very authentic and machine based. Meaning like we're turning a reverb knob instead of pulling up a reverb plugin, right? Yeah. That's like the biggest, you know, reverb you ever felt, you know? So artistically, it's different. I would say the thing that pushes me in a binding way is that maybe I give myself a little less time to get things done sometimes. So like, because I'm always doing this and because I'm always talking about it, doing it, pushing old projects, whatever I'm doing, I feel like I need to live my life too. Yeah. And so I'm not always going to just wake up every day at 7 a.m. and do a painting before I head out and drive an hour to work, right? Yeah. I'm going to sometimes just say yes. And then I'm like, all right, I know I got this thing to do on the weekend. I'm going to stare at the picture more. And then I'm going to just paint as fast as I can and trust myself. And that ends up usually being pretty good. I remember a couple of years ago, I would feel like anxiety in the middle of working. And now I don't feel anxiety. It's just like, all right, whatever, I'm going to get it done. I don't know how, but I'm going to get it done. I'm not going to think about it. So I know that for my next project, like for this project, for this album that I put out, that is in the process of being released, I wanted to paint something as long as I wanted to, with no bounds, no deadlines, and just see what happens when I put my all in and when I say it's done, period, not for a client. And I didn't charge anyone any money for commissions for about a year and a half. And I got these 10 paintings done on my own just to do that. Nice. But I think for the next project, I might want to kind of confine some things as far as like, I'd like a bigger space. I would like to maybe incorporate like my whole body into it, but maybe I just wear like one color and like I'm matching the color of the wall or something. And then like, so I'm disappearing into the wall and the canvas and then I'm painting it. And it's just like a bigger piece of art. So that's something I would like to kind of confine into, but I'm still in the process of putting this one out. So I do respect that though, like, you know, picking 3 or 4 instruments and then doing it. But to me, it feels like I'm not doing that to confine myself and become creative. It's more like that's just what I feel it needs to be on the track. And so I'm doing that.
Thank you. So here's the last real question I have. So I often revisit like Austin Kleon and I revisit quotes and things of the sort. And one that sticks out is you can't be content with mastery. You have to push yourself to become a student again. Can you share how like teaching art and music informs your practice as an artist and a musician?
Yeah. So I think that when you get trapped into feeling that you're a master in something, even when everybody's telling you that you're fantastic at what you do, I think the trap of it is that you don't feel inspired by your own work anymore. You know, like it doesn't feel like great inside to feel like I'm just the best at this. I think that, you know, teaching has helped me learn to really respect people more and explain things 100 different ways if I need to in order for them to understand it. And then to see, I think the main thing that teaching gives me inspiration wise is that one, I have to learn new things in the college courses I'm teaching now just to be able to teach these students. So I'm literally learning new things in order to teach the class and get paid. Right. Yeah. So that inspires me. And the classes I'm teaching now are like about learning Pro Tools, talking about the very beginnings of mixing music and mixing sound. And so that is very inspiring to me because when you hear sound and frequency, I tend to think, well, you know, how does that, I know that frequencies are part of our satellite transmissions, Wi-Fi transmissions, our phones. Like it tends to make me like branch out knowledge and see the world as like an inspiration. Yeah. The other thing it teaches me is that like to just, the more layman's terms I have to use to explain to the students, the more it makes you feel like you're not so much above someone else, right? You have learned to talk to everybody in relatable terms because you really believe that they can relate to it, right? So I believe I can relate to people. It teaches me to relate to people, not think I'm separate from other people. and then just to see people who are gifted and very young and don't know it. And then you understand, like, that inspires you. I feel like that inspires me because it's like, it's a real precious thing that you want to protect,
Mm-hmm.
and that just feeds into the whole respect side of it. Was part of the question, how do I keep myself inspired, or was part of or just the teaching side of it, right?
Just the teaching side of it. Yeah.
Yeah, the teaching side, I mean, because my perspective from teaching is like, when I teach young musicians, I don't teach them from a perspective of like, oh, I'm making you great. It's more like, you have been taught to think that you can't do this, or you're only supposed to pick one thing. And a lot of times with singing, you'd be surprised. So many people are good at singing and they have no clue. And they think that they have to go somewhere else. They have a fantastic projecting speaking voice. And then when they go to sing, they let go of that posture and they sing very quiet and meekly. And they just think there's no way I could be that. And I can hear it in their speaking voice. So I love teaching because it's like, it helps me believe and have faith in myself. So, and to want to continue to learn. And like, there's so many musicians and artists in Philadelphia that are like way farther on their journey than I am. So like, and they treat me with respect. So I just feel like I see a lot of end zones of like people that are 2 decades ahead of me in their progress and they're still learning. So, I mean, I'm not really questioning myself as far as what I create. I'm always checking myself and making sure it's feeling the way I want it to feel, but I don't really have words for that. That's why I'm doing the art, right? I don't have words like, it feels wrong. I mean, I could tell you that like the blue is a little off and it doesn't feel green enough. That's the basic thing, but really it's just making me feel like I'm staring at the thing I don't like. I want to be able to stare at the whole thing and not worry about it. So, to see other people working in their amazing ways and just, we're all kind of doing it together. And I mean, the last thing I'll say is that I think you could be a master at any level, really, as long as you're just like freely doing it and you're not thinking. I think it's the potential to be amazing at the first time you do it without even knowing it. So
thank you. Thank you for that. I agree. So I think that's a good place for us to start with the real questions. And I want to quickly, in these last moments here, hit you with these rapid fire questions. And I'll start off with this preface. I read that you played Division I softball and was ranked in the top 50est hardest girls to strike out nationwide in your senior year. So I have 3 quick pitches for you. 3 strikes, you're out, right? There are 25 hours in a day. How do you spend the extra hour?
Oof. How do I spend the extra hour? Worrying about the work I have to complete.
Fair. That's fair. What is your go-to lazy dinner? Food prep is a thing. So what is your go-to lazy dinner? You've had a long day. You haven't made anything. There was no meal prep. What is something go-to? Is it ramen? Is it like, I got, make a peanut butter and jelly sandwich? What is that go-to lazy dinner for you?
Okay. So I do have a special place in my heart for ramen. But I've upgraded it from just the basic package. I might slice some mushrooms and throw some spinach in there, and let it boil and kind of like affect the juice. And it kind of does, bolden it out. Or we'll say, adding crushed red pepper to ramen does help, things. Wow. But Grubhub, right? Especially since I'd say Grubhub is the lazy dinner now.
Okay. And lastly, since you're teaching folks, I got to ask this one: street smarts or book smarts? Which one do you value the most?
Street smarts.
We're back.
Because like, you got to know how to talk to people, and half the people out here killing in the field didn't pick up a textbook. Like I didn't pick up a textbook in order to be able to do it.
Yeah.
And, so like, and street smarts, you got to know how to respect people because you never know who you're around. You never know who might be dangerous. You never know who might be the person who gives you your next opportunity. I mean, the guy who hired me at the college, David Ivory, I met him from another musician who brought me to do some background vocals like 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I had no idea this man was ever going to give me a job at a college, and mix some of the music on my album. Like if I had been some diva-esque background singer, because that's what singers are told they're supposed to be, right? Like, singers have this bad rep that they're like real dramatic and real diva. Like if I had just done that, because like, come on, people, I think to me, the most important statement is people remember how you make them feel, right? Not what you do. So
that's true. So with that, I want to, thank you for being on this podcast and sharing a bit of your story with us. And two, I want to invite and encourage you to tell the fine folks where to check you out. Everything Sarah Kane there is, the floor is yours.
All right. Thank you. Thank you first so much for accepting my request to be interviewed by you, right? Because you had put it out there and I had definitely reached out. So thank you for interviewing me. And thank you for giving me a chance to talk about things that I love. You can find me anywhere that's Sarah Kane Artist. So Sarah with an H, SarahKane, and then artist. You can find me at sarahkaneartist.com. That's my website. Tons of information, fun stuff there. My IG is the same, my Twitter is the same, and my Facebook address is the same, Sarah Kane Artist. So other than that, hopefully you can check me out on my YouTube channel, Sarah Kane Artist, and you can really see the things we've been talking about, the music videos that combine the art and the music together. So there you have it, folks. I want to again thank Sarah Kane for coming on and chopping it up with me. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, music, creatives in and around your neck of the woods. You just got to look for them.